I'm going to break down the 4 levels of Doom Eternal combat that you need as a player to figure out where you're at and how you can get better, and hopefully you'll learn something along the way. There's some really cool info inside of here. Let's go. So first of all, we have to start the beginner, the white belt. This is someone who doesn't understand the Doom dance. They're just picking up the game. They have a long way to go between movement, positioning, quick switching, weak points, equipment usage, meathook, falter system, and cheap deaths for the wrong reason. A good way to think about it, a beginner looks at this game like the battlefield is two-dimensional. They can improve by learning the basic mechanics of Doom and staying on the move. And there is a key point that I tell people how you can improve, and they really take it to heart. So here's what you do. Here's how you get better. Focus on one thing that you are weak on. Maybe that's using your grenades, ice bomb. Really focus on it in your next battle and tell yourself that you will fix that issue. Don't go in and think like ice bomb only. Just go into battle with a focus on making sure that ice bomb gets used. And then once that gets ingrained in your head, what you do is to move on to the next thing. Maybe you don't chainsaw enough. So what you do is you're making building blocks and you're fixing each issue one by one, putting a hyper focus in on each one as you go, so you're not like scattered about trying to figure out 50 different things. Like, I gotta use my grenades here, ice bomb here, but then Allstin said I got a chainsaw here. Just work on it step by step, and in like a month or two, you're going to realize, oh, all this is coming natural to me. Now be sure to keep all of the things that you've learned fresh. You don't want to forget about your ice bomb when you're learning about your chainsaw, but that is such a long way and will help you out so much. This is something that everybody can do no matter where you are, and we'll talk about the intermediates here in just a second, but the beginners need to just learn the fundamentals, the basic mechanics, follow the tutorials. At this stage, they just want to familiarize themselves with the game and how it works. I don't even mean advanced quick switching or anything, I just mean how not to be reliant on one gun like the SSG, or just how to move around. Now the reason they die won't make a ton of sense yet. Yes, the enemy's in front of them and it killed them, but they won't be ready to figure out what they could have changed and why it matters. And it's okay, at this stage, the core focus is just learning the game. A summary of the beginner would be that they're on the path toward the end of the tunnel, and they got a flashlight, but the battery is low and the light is dim, but they are moving forward the best they can. Tripping, stumbling over rocks on the ground, but hey, they're making it. Now the next couple sections are really broken down. These are some of my favorite things in the video, so you gotta check it out. And hey, by the way, if this helps you out, consider subscribing to the channel for more Doom Eternal news and analysis. An intermediate goes beyond and has a fundamental understanding of the game, and we can start to see their strengths and weaknesses a little better. Now when we look at the intermediate player, we could say that like, oh, maybe they play on ultra violence or something like that, but it's not about difficulty, it's about understanding the game, which naturally falls into place with difficulty. The intermediate player understands what it means to stay on the move, but they don't often understand positioning. Like, I died, this is unfair. But it's often more of a positioning issue. Another thing to keep in mind is dodging. If you get hit, you take damage, and if you can predict the enemies what they're going to do, and as you get more advanced, you begin to pick up more on this and keep an eye on the battlefield as a whole, you're able to dodge around and see what enemies are doing, and if you don't get hit, you don't take damage. So that's super important to keep in mind as we get into the advanced players who seem to do that very well. So with the intermediate player, the nerves hit them. So when crap hits the fan, they go into panic mode. Their ability drops. They forget what to do and they end up dying. They don't have the field experience just yet to keep that composure and understand how to handle tense situations with a clear head and what to do to fix them. They don't know how to dig out of that hole just yet, and even if they did, they do get kind of scared. They forget to put on saving throw, forget to use the BFG, they go into panic mode. I mean, we've all been there. They're not very situationally aware just yet. It's more of like, oh, that was just a cheap shot, when realistically, they weren't paying attention to their death and the visual and audio cues that the game gives them. Now remember, with all this, I'm just giving you things that you look at in your play to see if like, hey, that's me, I do that, so you know what to figure out and how to figure out what to do to get better and what to look into. So usually intermediate players have basic quick swapping skills down. Typically SSG Ballista, and it's just the one that everybody goes to first. It's the least mechanically intensive. You typically fall back to a standard comfy combo. I'm super guilty of that too when it comes to the Marauder 1 cycles. They use the meathook in battle, but it's mostly to go to demons for armor, not to go like up and around the fight. So although the intermediate sees the battlefield as less two-dimensional as the beginner, the meathook is still more of that just one dimension. Intermediate players have a basic understanding of the enemy AI, but they don't yet quite get the intricacies and how the animation states work, and we'll talk about that here in the advanced here in just a second, so you can see the difference. And when intermediate players do make kills, they have what you call a Pyrrhic victory. This is where you end up using more resources than you gain, so I'm kind of adapting that to Doom Eternal. They go overkill on enemies. So let's say that they've got a Hell Knight weakened, and you can tell by the destructible demons, they do a full-on lock-on and waste a bunch of ammo and time getting that demon down. Doom Eternal is very important to look at the time to kill each demon, as opposed to DPS. My friend Chocolate Vanille, super good player, told me about that. More so focused on how long does it take to kill this demon and I can move on to the next, or how long can I go back and forth looking and keeping in mind who I'm looking at. Target prioritization is something we'll talk about in a second, and understand rather than raw DPS. Interesting. So the intermediate typically does whatever it takes to get the job done on just a basic level, even if it wastes ammo. We'll compare this to the advanced player later, who has it more optimized. The intermediate player starts to pick up on the advanced combat techniques like the energy shield buffering, even if they don't know like the explanation behind it, how it works, when to optimally use it, when to not use it. I'll explain all that here in just a second. They have a very basic understanding of the falter system, but they do tend to stay around to the basics. So it's like a one-trick pony. So for an example, perfect example, the Ice Bomb Cyber Mancubus to go in for the Blood Punch. They don't have any alternatives or fallbacks that they can go back on, and they just stick to that one thing, even if it's not the most optimal choice, if there's another better way. So if something's on cooldown, they're screwed. They don't have something better to go to for the situation. They're not aware of the other things that work, or even if they are, they just don't understand exactly when to use them, like the frag grenades, or heat blast, falters, or energy shield, blood punch, anything. So we'll get to cooldowns here in just a second, and how intermediate players use them. And as I mentioned, they understand that the meat hook is used in combat, but it's mostly just going to enemies, not up and around. So when you're talking about basic understanding, that also falls into it. They do get the concept of restacking, which is keeping your health and armor and ammo up, but it's not very efficient or varied. So maybe they might just like flame belch one enemy, or not choosing a group, or like I do, you meat hooked an enemy, flame belch, chainsaw, instead of saving that flame belch for the Sentinel Hammer to get more. They might not set up armor pools, and we'll touch on that here in just a minute. It's just a more basic level, and it's not that it's bad or anything, but it's just something you have to keep in mind if you want to be a better player and figure out how to improve. So I said we talk about cooldowns. Intermediate players typically have more like of a poor cooldown management. They don't have this innate ability, and what I mean by that is just something that you know from experience in your head to just know when something is ready again off cooldown. So for example, like if you use your chainsaw, you begin to develop a sense of how long it takes to charge in the back of your mind, so you know like, okay, I probably have a chainsaw available and I can use it now. They just kind of like use stuff like right when it comes off a cooldown. So when they use their Ice Bomb, it goes, it comes back, they throw it again, not actually holding it till they really need it, but then again, not holding it too long to where they don't use something that they need and just waste time and not use something that they should. They don't really plan ahead like that as much as well. So for example, that Ice Bomb 35 seconds or whatever cooldown, it just kind of gets used whenever it needs to get used. So it's kind of like fumbling around a little bit. Someone that's an intermediate may have more tunnel vision than someone who's more experienced, just focusing in directly on what's in front of them without actually keeping an eye on what's going on around. Be sure to watch the situational awareness video because it goes into a lot more detail than just that. A summary of the intermediate player is that the dim flashlight now has some bright lights. They see that light at the end of the tunnel, but they still have some trouble climbing over the obstacles in the way that they now know are there, unlike the beginner who doesn't even see them and just scrapes his knee. And again, this is all to help you get better. Think about if you're doing any of those things and you can say like, hey, I never even realized, because a key part of getting better at something, what makes it so hard, is that you don't know what to look for. You're like, I'm beating my head against the wall, this is so frustrating, why can't I get better? You just don't know what to see and what to look for to fix. Now, we're getting into the advanced players. These right here are what Hugo calls the black belts. They have a great sense of awareness on the battlefield. They've played enough to know how enemy AI reacts and what to expect. They can gauge how far an enemy's going to jump, how it's going to react, and know accordingly. And I have a great video on situational awareness. You gotta watch it. It goes into a whole lot more detail than this. They understand that the meat hook is a combat traversal tool. They go get armor from the enemies, but they also don't just do meat hook super shotgun. They might do meat hook into a precision bolt to take 10 less armor, but to save the shotgun shells if they need them. It's just all depends. It's a little more mechanically intensive, but not bad. They go up and around with enemies with the meat hook. It's not just to the enemy for armor. It's actually a traversal tool in the battlefield. They understand the advanced combat tech. Like I talked about the energy shield chainsaw explanation, the buffering. What I mean by that is if you're going into a chainsaw, you can hold down, or even a glory kill, you can hold down your chain gun weapon button and your mod key, and you will instantly come out directly on the first frame with your chain gun shield out. Understanding when to use that, because you do go a little slower, but you can still use your blood fueled benefit, is super important. So the chain gun shield, when upgraded, recharges at 4 seconds, and the chainsaw is 3. So technically, if you have that 1 second buffer, you can come out of a chainsaw with the chain gun shield every single time. And just understanding how that shield works, as far as that it falters heavies whenever you are upgraded it, or even like the destroyer blade has a little falter beam that does no damage. It's understanding, and it's not just using that advanced combat tech like that, it's understanding how and why it works, when to use it, and how to apply it to the situation at hand, even though a million different things are going on. They do advanced ballista boosting. I know I didn't touch on this yet, but rather than just boosting back with the ballista, they might do quick swap ballista boost, back and then down, and just understanding how to move with it, with or without air control, as it is different between the two. Combining it with jump pads, understanding when they can use it for ammo management, routing in that ammo, especially if you're a speedrunner, because you have to decide, do you want to use this ballista or do you want to boost off the pad? Or when you do a ballista boost, gets so good. When you do a ballista boost, you can hit an enemy on the way back to both do damage for the enemy and use it for your boost. That's a little Red Warrior trick that's so handy. It's all these things that you don't realize are out there until people start doing them, and then you're like, oh, that's really cool. So the advanced players keep a cooler head in tense situations, and they understand how to dig out of that hole because they have been there. They've put the hours into the game. They put that time in to know, like, hey, this is what I can do. This is how I get out of here. I've been here before. We know how to deal with this. I remember my saving throw. I remember my BFG. I don't have to put on saving throw early. I understand how this low health window works, that when an enemy puts you into low health, you typically have a little window, a soft saving throw. But that's also really quick, because if you've ever seen a Dread Knight, they get you really fast. So understanding that low health window is just gone in a second, that matters too. Restacking is a priority. They find the windows to do it, and that's what separates them from intermediate. The right thing is done at the right time. They realize that the armor stays on the ground for 20 seconds, and you can create an armor pool on the ground and still be able to do your flame belch, especially if you have Equipment Fiend, and understanding the intricacies of how that works with its cooldowns, and how much doing a kill takes away from an enemy, and using the flame hook to recharge your flame belch. It's not like you have to remember, oh, this is 0.675 whenever I use this thing here. It's just this innate ability just to understand and feel. It's something you have to get with time. You just get understanding of what happens when and why and how it feels. The demon combos are ingrained in their head, whereas the intermediates or even the beginners use a Pyrrhic Victory and go overkill. The advanced know what it takes to kill what demon, when, and the cost. They know that you can do 2 Destroyer Blade pips to stagger a Whiplash, or 3 to kill. They know that a Lachlan will stagger a Dread Knight, or it'll kill a Hell Knight. They know that the little tank on the back of the carcass that he wears, if you shoot that, it'll blow him up just like that, one shot, so boom, precision bolt, get him. They understand this, and it's a multifaceted benefit and approach. Let me explain that. So, understanding the combos, combined with better aim, does not just give you 2 benefits. It's greater than that. It's exponential, because understanding how much ammo to use will save you ammo. This, combined with better aim, listen to this, means that they are more ammo efficient. They save their bullets, save your ammunition, as Samuel said in 2016. They have better aim, which means less ammo is lost. They know the time to kill and the DPS and all that. Less ammo is lost. That means a faster time to kill each demon, less chainsaw, more optimization out on the battlefield. They also have a deep understanding of the falter system. It's more than just the Ice Bomb Cyber Mancubus. They might time a frag with proper timing, a heat blast maybe. They might go in close and time a blood punch on the Cyber Mancubus without anything else if they're gutsy, because they understand the animations of the Cyber Mancubus, how he shoots when, his cannons, like he'll do this cannon first, that cannon, and be able to go in and hit him. Maybe a Cyber Mancubus is a bad example because of melee and his little pool there, but they understand how and why the enemies do what they do and how they work, so they can take advantage of that. They can basically read the enemy. This is super cool. Get ready for this. They understand animation states, to tie into the last thing we talked about. It's from the little things, like weak points break after an animation. They flash red, so if your Arachnotron is jumping off the ceiling or a zombie's jumping over a ledge, which they don't have weak points, it'll flash red and then it'll break once the animation finishes. They understand that certain animations can override the demon stagger state, which means that whenever you take a Tyrant, 10,000 health. He staggers at 500. If you do an attack that while he's doing his little dashy animation or his firing up into the air, it will take him past the 500, but the game will recognize the animation he's currently doing and not put him into the stagger state. I think that should be fixed, but at this time, that's how it is. They'd also understand that the Archvile kill, that little barrel behind where one of the Archvile can spawn in Necrovol 2, if you blow it up, it does a precision bolt amount of damage, therefore you have to consider that when you're going in for the glory kill setups for him. There's just so much to think about and consider, and if you do pass the stagger threshold, you have to wait like 10, 15, 20 seconds, whatever, and they will stagger then from a punch, 1 damage. Otherwise, they'll never re-stagger again. It's that kind of thing. We have to talk about target prioritization. They know when to hit who, and they can plan steps ahead to know who to hit next, and how to adapt when things go wrong. Now, when it comes to tunnel vision and someone that's more advanced, they're able to keep an eye out on what's going on all around their screen. Now, even their primary target that might be directly in front of them, they can still tell through their peripheral vision what's going on elsewhere, even if they're not focused on that one particular spot. They understand the flow of combat, and even if you plan for it, they still have a dynamic feel to it. Combat does, it's dynamic. They understand how to improvise, adapt, and overcome. Even if they do not know spawns, this is so important, this adaptation that they know how to fix. They do not just stick to a failing plan. If a plan is not working, do not try to be a hero and save it. Go to another plan that is much better, and do not try, just let go of your pride, fix the problem, don't hang on to a failing plan. Very key point, you need to listen to this one. The advanced people have the field experience to know what to do next. That's why you watch these top people like Zai, Chocolate Vanilla, all these guys, Devo, play these randomizer mods, and they just slay it because it doesn't matter that they don't know what's coming up next. They have the field experience. They're not just completely reliant on the spawns and understanding and memorizing where those are, although that really does help to know that. They can take any situation you put them in and just dominate it. Does not matter. It's one thing to have book experience and just know all these facts and stuff I'm spouting off by the head, but it's another thing to have physically put in the hours and gain that field experience firsthand so you can say, yeah, I can do this here. I've done this before. This is how this works. And this is how this is going to work because I know what to predict and how things happen. They think outside the box. It's not always a script. It's not always, I must lock onto this knight. I mean, often you do it because it is the most effective, that they have all these variations and alternate things that if you take away their guns, they can still do really well because they understand how this game works, and even the underused mods they can still do well with because they get it. It's that innate ability that I was talking about earlier, remember? They just have this natural feel to manage cooldowns. It's whenever something's ready again, even without looking, boom, they got it. That's why these no HUD players, they listen and they are able to pick out in their brain. They're able to compartmentalize and say, this is a game sound. Okay, I hear this chainsaw sound coming up. I have this available. And okay, this other sound's available too. They're able to separate these things mentally and keep in focus on the battle while still pushing ahead. And if you're intimidated by this, if you're like, I'm never going to be able to do this. I know I'm making it sound like super technical and fancy and flashy, but you'll be surprised at what you pick up on as you practice and play. All of this comes naturally. It's not like these pro players are telling themselves, I must do this and that. They get it naturally. They gauge what's coming, what to do, based off the situation at hand, and what will happen next. The true masters of the game, the true S-tier, they're the beyond the black belts. They are the senseis. They're the true masters of the Doom dance. And I had some trouble figuring out the difference between these guys and the advanced because, like, you see them play and you know that there's a difference. It's just hard to pinpoint other than, like, they are super really freaking good. I was talking to Chaco about it, and he said the decision-making is one of the biggest things. I think that, yes, but it's the consistency that shines through. They can perform excellently at a high rate. Not to say they don't have bad days, they do. But the key thing that separates them from the advanced tier, and I'm not S tier, I'm not, is this methodical execution and thinking. I still have my bad habits. I still hang on to my chain gun shield for low DPS, even when I'm far away from the Baron, and even though I know that the chain gun falters the Hell Knight, Dread Knight, Baron Knight class, I should be switching to something more optimal if I'm safe. I burn up my chain gun shield too much when I should be hanging on to it for those needed moments. It is that methodical execution and thinking that really separates them. That situational awareness, just being able to have eyes in the back of their head, the adaptability that they have, they can do anything and everything. It does not matter what you put in front of them. It does not matter if it's a randomizer. They will rock it anyway. and just understanding how to restack. You watch some of these players and they're like, they never die. Well, they know how to dodge and avoid hits. Understanding the enemy AI, it falls into that like we talked about earlier. They can see these attacks, dodge them, and understand how to move on the battlefield. Movement is so key. Positioning is so key. If you only fix one thing from what I talk about today, that is it. That separates the men from the boys, the ladies from the girls, the men, whatever you want to say, whatever kind of crap you want to say. That is what it is. They can restack like crazy, but if you don't get hit, you don't take damage, straight up. I mean, there's even more out there to talk about, like kiting enemies around to avoid them as far as positioning goes, but I think 20 minutes is a good length for now. Be sure to let me know what you think about this in the comments below, and subscribe to the channel if you like news and analysis. My name's Allstin. Thank you so much for watching.